My name is Carolyn, and I talk to the spirit world. Travel with me to a dimension filled with love, light, and joyful surprises. Welcome to Carolyn's Psychic Playroom. Hi everyone, Carolyn Wilkins here. I'm delighted to welcome you to another edition of Carolyn's Psychic Playroom. And I'm hoping that you've been enjoying the episodes. As you know, they are available not only here on Cambridge Cable Television, but also they are up on YouTube. And if you're a podcast kind of person, I also post my episodes on Podbean and Apple Music so that you can watch them, listen to them. So this episode, I have a super wonderful guest. This is somebody that I have known for more years than I would like to actually list right here, because then it's going to remind the world exactly how old I am. But suffice it to say that this is a friend of long standing. We grew up together in Chicago, and as you will see in this interview, he is a very fascinating person, full of creative ideas. He's a writer, he's a social activist, he is a deeply spiritual person, and we're going to be talking with Mr. AAl Cunningham later on in the program. First, I always like to, at the beginning of the show, offer a little psychic insight for you guys. After all, it's Carolyn's Psychic Playroom, and I like to play. And lately, my latest sort of play tool has been these wonderful African American tarot cards, the African American Tarot. And I just got this deck a few weeks ago, so I'm still learning it. But what I like about it is it combines the metaphysical principles of the Rider-Waite deck with African imagery and African American ancestors. So there are pictures of ancestors, so you get a little piece of African American history when you pull a card. You learn a little bit about African spirituality when you pull a card, and yet it's also connected to those age-old principles of wisdom that are embodied in the Rider-Waite deck. So it's a lot. But anyway, I thought today it would be fun for me to pull 3 cards for you guys. Now, I know that you will be watching this program at a different time from when I'm pulling the cards. I used to be live in the studio pulling them, and you were watching on your TV. That's no longer the case. So what I do when I throw these cards, I intend that the message that I bring will apply to each and every one of you at the time that you watch it. So it is not a time-bound message. If you know, energy is in fact beyond time and space. So this is actually a very real metaphysical fact. But when you watch this, the message that I bring is going to hit you according to what you need for your particular life circumstance in the moment as you are watching. That is my intention. So that said, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to shuffle the deck, and I'm going to ask that my African American Tarot bring me 3 cards that will be most helpful for my viewers whenever they watch this program, that it lift and shift them, you guys, in the highest and best possible way. I'm going to shuffle them one more time, and then I'll pull 3 cards. So here we go. Shuffle, and let's spread the cards out. And what do we have here? The first card is number 6, and this is the Lovers. If you're familiar with the Rider-Waite deck, it's a man and a woman in love. This being the kind of African version. They're in a more tropical environment with a beautiful ocean behind them, and a God of love above them, blessing them like an angel. So there you have it. So this can apply both to your love life, your actual love life. It can apply, in fact, to the love affair that we're always in the process of building with ourselves, between us and our higher self and our soul. And so all of these things are in play here. Let me pull another card and see what might be helpful. And this card is the Ace of Pentacles. All right. The Ace of Pentacles is all about the Benjamins. We're talking about material wealth. And this man is powerful. He's holding a giant gold disc. There's a lot of money here, but there's also the ability to generate money. And if you're not yet seeing the money that you would like to receive, this card is indicating that you have the power to generate this, and that this is the beginning. Aces always refer to kind of the beginning of things. All right, one more card, and this card is, okay, if I'm not mistaken, this is the Devil right here. Okay, now you know in the Rider-Waite deck, for those of you who are familiar with the tarot, the Devil is this scary half goat, half man figure with a reverse pentagram. Here, he's a scary figure, and the man and the woman are imprisoned. But once again, and this is true of the Rider-Waite deck as well, they are imprisoned, but they're not actually being held by this spider web. They only think they are. And a spider web, if you've ever walked into one or experienced one, it's flimsy. We can walk right through. We're not a fly. We can walk right through it. We are not, but there are times, and I'm sure you've experienced that, when you feel that you're caught in a web. But what this card is saying, and this is the deep message, the hidden message of the Devil card, whether you're looking at this African version or the Rider-Waite version, is that in fact, the things that we fear the most often exist in our minds and in our attitudes about them. And if we're able to shift the attitude, we are then able to break free from this concept, idea, or thing that has imprisoned us. So once again, to kind of sum up the reading, this is very interesting. We started with the Lovers, okay, and we ended with lovers but imprisoned by their own fears, doubts, worries, and negative impulses. And in between, we have the Ace of Money. So what this says to me is that this reading is about your money. And if you've been having doubts, fears, worries about your money, look to improve your own connection with your inner wisdom and trusting your own inner guidance, because this love affair here always is always about you and you in the end. Yes, it's nice to have a lover. Yes, it can be helpful, especially maybe a lover to give us some money. That's all good. But in the end, it's going to be about your ability to be in love with that part of you which is eternal, true, and always available to support you no matter what externals may be showing you, and no matter what cobwebs may be in your mind. So that is my take today and reading from the African American Tarot. And so now I'm going to bring up my amazing guest, Mr. Al Cunningham. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Carolyn's Psychic Playroom. I'm so thrilled today to have as my guest someone that I have known since, I want to say, the seventh grade, which, trust me, has been a very long time. But yet at the same time, I was thinking about this today. I don't know if you find this true, but we can know a person for years and years, but it turns out that we don't, in fact, know them nearly as well as we think we do. And this is definitely true with my guest, Al Cunningham. Al has traveled, he has been a writer, a community activist, a videographer, just an amazing human on many levels. And he's going to share with us some things that, even though, like I said, I've known him for a number of years, I truly don't know the answer. So welcome to Carolyn's Psychic Playroom, Al.
Thank you, Carolyn. I can't imagine anyone I would rather spending the time with.
Oh, so I'm going to jump right in at the beginning. We both attended the University of Chicago Laboratory School way back in the day. And I remember you specifically as being someone that used to always carry a briefcase. And I'm going to embarrass you now because maybe you've forgotten about that, but you used to, back in that time, not everyone carried a briefcase, trust me. And you always carried a briefcase. And in my mind, you were always going to be doing something around journalism or writing. That always felt close to the bone with you. So tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing now along those lines.
Well, this couldn't be a more apropos conversation since we do go so far back. And what I'm doing right now is going back, to my childhood, to our childhood, on the south side of Chicago and, the mythical area of Bronzeville. And it's kind of fascinating because these are memories that I have to kind of take some time to even consider how to approach, much less how to share, because they are they're definitely not the strongest of memories of my adolescence and young childhood, and at the same time there are some things about them that are that really are stuck in my mind.
They
One thing
stick
that's,
with you.
yeah, I know. And like the things that your elders say, my grandmother that lived with us, was sort of a compendium of all of the sort of social things. She wasn't a part of it. Maybe that gave her a little bit of perspective. But one thing she would talk about a lot of different people, but I can remember the University of Chicago and people associated with it, counted for something. And of course, people now, I guess, don't have a sense of what almost like a community college the University of Chicago was in the beginning. And, basically anybody could go there, which is pretty amazing, in and of itself. Mm-hmm. But then the people, in our family, my great uncle, John M. Brannigan Sr., who was one of the first graduates of the law school, Black graduates of the law school, and, other people in the family. And my grandmother used to often point out that one of the smartest men in the world, J. Ernest Wilkins. And I mean, like I said, I don't know that she ever even, encountered your grandfather or whatever, but the point is that those are the kinds of things growing up and references and things that kind of played out later on, without necessarily even understanding, why, they came up in the first place. So that's what I'm working on now. I'm writing. Uh, I'm going to borrow from our dear Cicely Tyson. It's a memoir.
Ah, that's lovely.
I think that's her description of her book,
Uh-huh.
and I like that because my intention is less to talk about me, although obviously that's impossible since it's my story, but more to talk about the circumstances and even the
Yes.
physical um, existence of it, because I realize more and more in all of these situations with Karens and whomever else is around here have really let me know that people have no sense of how Black people live.
No. And my personal pet peeve, no sense of history, not only of Black history, but of any kind of history that is beginning to fade. You have students now, and I won't call any individual out, but I have had people who have written papers, and it was clear from the paper they were confused between the Civil War and World War II. They
Oh,
knew
wow.
that it was some kind of a war, but these things were nearly 100 years apart. And yet, but this is part of, I believe, our charge, that whole idea to go back and really recapture our family history and to speak about it and to speak about the unique people. And I notice that you are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses there
Absolutely,
behind you,
absolutely,
and I'm
absolutely.
assuming those are your family. So I want to ask you a little bit, because as you know, I'm big on this whole thing of the ancestors, and I'm a psychic medium, and I do talk to dead people, and including my own ancestors. But I want to ask you if, since you've been working on this project, have you received any sort of nudges, inspirations? Do you feel the presence of some of your departed loved ones, or do you feel that they maybe inspired you a little bit, or might be kicking you in the what to move forward with the project?
I really do. I've gotten a lot of interesting moments. I guess I've been now immersed in my surroundings and my history for almost a year now. So it's because of the pandemic. So sometimes it's hard for me to fully discern if everything is a is a message, or if
Mm-hmm.
just some things are a message. But I can only say that in many situations, things have come to my attention, or if I have been looking for a photo,
Mm-hmm.
that was buried, wherever, it has um, come up for me, and even the things related to my own experiences as a child. I started writing professionally at 11,
Mm-hmm.
and so for the weekly newspaper in my neighborhood, the Bulletin newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So now suddenly I look up and I think, let me just see if this stuff is online. And sure enough, I find a site where I have a free 7-day trial now, and I can look at the things that I was writing in the mid '60s.
Oh, for
You know,
Pete's sake.
um,
Isn't that something? That's a wonderful feeling, I think, because you look back at your life and you see that maybe despite the fact that you've done a number of different things, there's been kind of a through line
an arc,
carrying
yes.
throughout. However, now I want to just detour a little bit from your writing and from your personal memoir thing, documoir, whatever you said that was. But I know that you are also a community activist, and I know that you have been very involved for a long time in serving people, the community with HIV/AIDS, but also just your community in general, people of color, and all that. And I wondered if you could just talk about that a little, because that's a whole other very interesting part of your life.
It is, and it's very organic for me because it grows out once again of my childhood experience and the the beloved community, you know, that was the physical community, and that had a very spiritual basis. I mean, you know, I was a part of a movement, if you will, of people who were educated in historically Black colleges and universities established by the American Missionary Association arm of the then Congregational Church, now United Church of Christ. And that led the alums, the graduates of these schools to attend, you know, Congregational / United Churches of Christ. And that network, you know, formed the basis of a lot of the service and social justice activities, and even what we called in the 60s human relations activities, of in terms of, you know, integration and all that kind of thing. So and then beyond that, of course, was the whole movement around civil rights that Dr. King was so engaged with. And I don't know how aware people are anymore of just how young the people that were apart, that were being hosed and bitten by the dogs and stuff, you know, they were, you know, their parents couldn't afford to be seen in those situations. But, you know, a lot of them were teenagers, not much older than we were, if that, at the time. So that led, you know, along with the establishment of a Black radio station in Chicago, WVON, the voice of the Negro, uh, you know, to a real indoctrination that they put about by playing the line from Dr. King's speech, "Everybody can be great because everybody can serve." And I
Nice.
mean, I didn't really, you know, think about it at the time, but they played that every hour on the hour, at the top of the hour on the
Nice.
station. And it, you know, it ultimately, all these other things, "I have a dream" or whatever, but this is probably one of the pithiest things he ever said. And it definitely, you know, whether I was noticing at the time or not, it, along with all the other things that I was doing, it let me understand the importance of community involvement and service.
That's
And
powerful. You know, what's funny is that, of course, I listened to that station all the time. We all did, because back in the day, there was nothing else.
that was
It's
it.
not like we had a million choices and apps and
And
the
you were lucky if you could
internet,
get
and you
it
could
because
have
it
you.
wasn't the strongest signal, you
Yes,
know.
exactly. And yeah, you had to tune in with it. But yes, those things that those values and those things that were given almost on a drip feed from our parents and from the church, even though we were in our rebellious 60s, the 60s, if you will, I think it definitely sunk in. So now, I know that you're doing some work, or you were recently doing some work in your own community in Detroit around helping people with internet access. Can you talk about that a little? Because that takes us into the present. And sadly, although we would like to think that the 60s was beautiful and we accomplished everything we set out to do and all is now good, we can see that that is in fact not the case, and much work needs to be done, and that this type of work, connecting people to internet access, for example, is actually important community activism. So I was
Absolutely.
just going to ask you if you could speak to that a little.
Yes, well, that was a wonderful opportunity that a local nonprofit, you know, got funded to put forth in, I think, 3 or 4 communities in Detroit. And the idea was to be able to establish a web access internet system for a community, and to, at the time, it was a really wonderful, and it's still a very fast internet system, but like 100 megabytes a second or whatever. So it was really, if you stood outside the building downtown where this place is located, you could download the universe in 5 seconds,
Wow.
just
Yeah.
on your phone or whatever. But so yes, the thing, it grew out of the fact that there was a recognition that 30% of Detroit families did not have internet access, and the
Wow.
impact on kids, especially being able to do homework and whatever. And of course, this was long before pandemic and all that. Just but that really attracted me, and the fact that we could design this project and do what we thought would be appropriate to be able to engage people and find out what they wanted and all that. That was a real slam dunk for me. And it also, just to say, it kind of takes me back even further, because the last thing that my father did before he passed away 31 years ago now was to teach the internet at the National Academy of Science, and the just burgeoning internet. I mean, my last conversation with my dad in 1990, he dropped the word laptop on me. He said, keep your eyes open for laptops. So I
Wow.
have an amazing, once again, these things all kind of, work together on some level. And I
Wow.
feel as though, I'm called for those reasons as well, that
Well,
I have this.
what a great story. Oh, that's awesome. So, here is a question for you. A lot of the people that watch this program are, of course, as they're watching you talking about your family and your connecting of history and all that with your sort of almost a spiritual calling to make a difference, that type of thing. Um, do you have sort of maybe a tip for them about how to get started? Because I notice you're deep now into researching your family and all of that. And so, to the person who might be out there watching and saying, boy, I've got interesting family, I sure would like to make a documoir or whatever. You have to teach me that word again. But do you have any tips or suggestions for them?
Well, I think the most important thing is to really focus on what you love about what it is that and especially on the people that are, especially those that are still around, in many cases, that we don't necessarily stop to think, oh, this person is an encyclopedia of information. I mean, you're very fortunate that your mother is still with us, and that's a great thing. Other people we know, like Larry Carroll, his mother and my mother were college roommates.
Mm,
She's still with us, and so she can reference things. If I show her a picture from 70 years ago of my parents, she can give me some response. So
nice.
I think that is perhaps the most important thing, and then being able to back that up by maybe going on someplace like ancestry.com,
Mm,
get a free trial once again or whatever, and see if you and see what you can find out, or just search. That's the thing to me, is that virtually anything you want to know is
mhm.
so remarkably easy to access if you just put the
Nowadays,
words. It's just
that's right.
amazing.
It
I mean, I
is
even put my own
amazing.
name in there sometimes and think, wow, I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that's
it's
what it's like.
stunning because even 20 years ago, you would have maybe had to go down to Vicksburg, Mississippi, and go to some archive and hope that,
I did, yeah. I
looking
went to
through
the
some,
county,
there you go. Me
and
too, when I was
and
writing.
poured over these
Yes,
things, and
yes,
got up and went out when they went to lunch or whatever. But yes, um, it was a very different kind of a thing, and now it is
yes.
so is at your fingertips, and you don't have to have
Absolutely.
a really expensive computer or whatever
No,
anymore. To that's one good thing too, is that they've made it more accessible even to those of us who may just be looking at a phone with it.
absolutely. And so I want to say to our listeners, and I'm sure that Al would back me up on this, now's the time. If you've been thinking about researching your family, if you've been thinking about, I'm getting these messages, I keep thinking about my father and keep thinking about the things that he did in life, and I want to make sure that my grandchildren still know who he was and this type of thing. Now is a great time. Unprecedented access to archives and all that through the
And
internet,
time, you're not
and
busy
time.
running around, doing all these other things for a
Absolutely.
change,
Our
so you can.
extras have been stripped away. So, a couple of other random fun facts about Al that I know. And one is to return back to the topic of spirituality for a minute. Correct me if I'm wrong, but for quite a while you were thinking about actually becoming a minister, and I want to say you studied a little bit with the Unitarians for a while, and and so just briefly on the topic of that sort of beloved community and this connection between sort of spirituality, social activism, and creativity, which seems to be sort of a little nexus point for you. Um, can you preach a little bit about that and just call back a little bit of your preaching days?
Well, fortunately I never got to the preaching phase. What it was for me in the late '80s and early '90s, as the whole AIDS epidemic was kind of becoming so significant in my life. I felt, as the people who live in the seismically challenged California area say, I felt the need to seismically retrofit the foundations of my spiritual understanding.
Woo!
And and so I was very fortunate at the time that a personal friend and social friend of mine, Dr. Ibrahim Farajajeh, was a professor at the Howard University School of Divinity.
Mhm.
And so I decided to enroll, to apply there so that I could have the benefit of his training, and some other people there too. And it was a brief but pretty enlightening experience. It's only an historically Black college or university dealing with issues of religion and spirituality can be. But I was just, Dr. Farajajeh was just someone that I absolutely admired, and I knew that he was probably up against a lot of resistance for some of the things that he was talking about at the university. But I was, and then, just to bring it forward to the UU thing you're talking about, then I moved to San Francisco, and I got even more immersed in AIDS, and as the media coordinator for the National Task Force on AIDS Prevention.
Mm.
And that's when I went to the Graduate University Theological Union at Berkeley, and the Starr King School for the Ministry, where ultimately I was able to entice my mentor, Dr. Farajajeh, and he became the provost of Starr King for many years. So it's been, and that in the meantime in San Francisco finally gave me a chance to engage with another spiritual mentor, Howard Thurman, the mentor of Martin Luther King, and who brought us basically, the whole Gandhian notion of passive resistance, and had co-founded a church in San Francisco, the Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples, of which I became a member. It's the last church to which I belonged, and became very engaged, and even had a chance to spend some time with Dr. Thurman's widow, Sue
Wow.
Thurman, before she passed away.
Wow. Now, he is one of my all-time heroes, Dr. Thurman, and I'm a huge fan. For people at the Psychic Playroom, if you have not heard or read about Dr. Howard Thurman, he's well worth Googling because he was a brilliant man who managed to combine a completely original, in my view, sort of approach to Christianity that involves being both ecumenical, not only of other Christians, but of other faiths altogether. And in his church, he had people from all different religions. He brought music from everywhere, dancing, all this, and also a connection, profound connection to the inner spirit and the importance of meditation and allowing yourself to be guided from within. So if you haven't heard of Howard Thurman, and FYI, he was Dr. King's teacher at BU, as Al mentioned.
Yeah. And there's so much, the best thing about Dr. Thurman is that his, perhaps the most profound thing about him was his voice. And the fact that's why he was considered, one of the greatest preachers of the time. And you can still hear his meditations, they established the listening rooms years ago, and now they've been, they're recorded and available. I'm sure they're on YouTube and everything.
They are.
So if you have never, the most important thing to me about Thurman is you can read him, excellent. There's certainly many books. They say that Dr. King always carried Jesus and the Disinherited with him wherever he went, by Dr. Howard Thurman, and certainly his meditations. I have them as part of my shuffle, and when they come up, I know that okay, this is something I need to stop and and hear, and just it gives me goosebumps just to think about them.
Yeah, no,
his voice is so deep and so
moving.
Yes, absolutely.
So listen, amazingly, we have come to the end of our time together. And as you guys can see out there in Psychic Playroom land, Al is full of all kinds of information, all kinds of interesting developments. And I think we'll just have to have him back at some point because there are about 60 more questions that I could have asked that I didn't
got to
get.
talk at some point about Cicely Tyson. So, I know she's just left the stage, and I'm sure she although she's number one without our help.
Oh my gosh. So there's the book. Hold the book up again for people who just are looking for something to read. And maybe next time we talk, Al, we will have to go into that. But in any case, thank you so much for being my guest today. And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Carolyn. I enjoyed it so much. It was my pleasure. And don't forget the Duke now. We got to talk about the Duke too.
That'll be another conversation.
Okie dokie. Take good care now. Thank you. So there you have it, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed that interview. Al is an amazing person. As you saw, we have known each other forever, and he's done so many interesting things. I'm going to put his information below. I know that he's on Facebook, he's on Instagram, and if you're interested in finding out more about Al and his projects, definitely you want to check him out. Meanwhile, as always, wishing you just a blessed and beautiful day. And if you would like a reading from me live here, well, not live anymore, but I would read you using my cards, and you would broadcast, the reading would be broadcast on my show. I never use your full name, so you remain anonymous. You're always just by initials. But if it sounds like it would be fun for you to have a reading and for me to do the reading on the show, I would be honored to do that. And you can request your reading, I should say, by writing to psychicplayroom@gmail.com. All right? So this is Carolyn Wilkins, and I will see you in 2 weeks with another episode. Bye for now.
Thoughts are things with the energy to make life better for you and for me. Touch the light.